Welcome, movie lovers. My name is Michael Clayton, and this is Seduced by Cinema. And to kick off our first movie review here, I am going to start with the movie that is currently at the top of the box office, and that is Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn, which is quite a mouthful. They did recently change the name for theatrical release to Harley Quinn Birds of Prey because the first week, even though it was at #1, didn't quite earn the amount of money that they wanted it to earn. And that's kind of a shame because this movie's a lot of fun. It certainly has its issues, and I'm going to get to that, but out of the DCU movies, out of the DC Universe releases, this is one of the better films they've had. Now, there's a lot of things that I think deserve credit for that, but first and foremost, we gotta give credit to Margot Robbie because she knocks it out of the park as Harley Quinn in this movie. Now, if you're a fan of Harley Quinn, you are going to really enjoy this film because she captures the essence of the character, she captures the codependency, she captures the hilarity to it, she captures the irreverence. It really is all on display here, and even though Suicide Squad was not a good film by any means, for the quote-unquote sequel, they really did step up their game. Robbie was one of the best parts of Suicide Squad, and there weren't many, but she is by and far way better in this film and given way more to do in this movie than she was in the previous incarnation. I have to say they did a really good job of actually having the tone and the look of the film also very reminiscent of Harley herself. This is a very colorful film. It's a very chaotic film at times and a very anarchic film. You know, there's a lot of anarchy to it. And it really kind of represents Harley's personality in a really good way. Like when you watch this movie, you're like, yes, this would be what it would be like to step in the mind of Harley Quinn. If you're familiar with her from the comics or the animated series that she actually originated with, you will find that the movie really does justice with that character. Now, the one complaint that I have that is probably the most overreaching regarding this film is Harley is fantastic, but the rest of the cast, whether it be the supporting cast or the villain, all seem to be taking a back seat to Harley's antics. There are other birds of prey in this movie as it is titled, but it's a very misleading title because 80% of the movie is really focused on the character of Harley Quinn, and then the other characters such as Cassandra Cain, Black Canary, Renee Montoya, they're all given attention, but they're all given very little to do. Most of the supporting cast seems literally there just to kind of support the Harley Quinn character and to strengthen that to the detriment of their own character at oftentimes. The same goes for the villain. Ewan McGregor is clearly having a lot of fun as Black Mask. And I gotta say, I enjoyed him in the role. He's very entertaining. He definitely is taking a little bit of a campier touch to it, but because this film is somewhat of a comedy anyway, it fits the tone of the rest of the film, so I was able to go ahead and accept that and have fun with it. Now, I have to say, this movie should be judged on its own merits, and even though it is based on a comic book, we shouldn't get in the habit of merely basing it from the source material. However, having read some Batman comics in my day and being familiar with the Batman Rogues Gallery, I have to say, outside of Harley Quinn, most of these characters do not resemble their comic counterparts that well. The one exception being Rosie Perez as Renee Montoya, who seems to have a lot of the same spunk and a lot of the same can-do attitude and a lot of the same kind of rough exterior to her that I found familiar in the comic. Other characters such as Black Canary or Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Huntress bear very little resemblance to the characters as I recognize them in the comic outside of the name and some of the aesthetic. And in the case of Black Canary, I can't even say that. Her costume and her entire carrying of her character seems very, very contrary to some of the elements that I remember from the comic myself. Now, I do want to say it is always exciting when you see a movie that did not do it right, such as Suicide Squad, where they just didn't seem to nail what made that comic or the character so good, and then to see a movie studio take those qualities and then revamp them polish them, and actually come out with a product that is more to the liking of what fans are looking for. While this movie does not do justice with many of the characters are still entertaining. The characters still support the main story, which is strictly focused on Harley, and it still manages to create a very entertaining product. Now, I do have to say that the pacing issues that I had with Suicide Squad, where it would go really, really fast and then go really, really slow and never really seem to find a really strong flow, there's a little bit of that here too. There are times that the movie's very, very chaotic, and then it will go back in timeline, and then it will move forward. Some of that, I think, was done to carry on and to reflect the chaotic nature of Harley herself. But in terms of the pacing of a story, there were times that it did trip up the story a little bit, and I felt could hinder the ability for the story to be told in an effective manner. But overall, the film does work. The action sequences are very well shot. It does use a little bit of that slow motion that Zack Snyder has popularized and maybe over-popularized to a certain degree. That is common in a lot of the DCU movies. But it doesn't overuse it the way I've seen it done in some of the past incarnations from the DCU. They are really well shot. The choreography for the fight scenes are effective. And I felt the character moments were actually carried with a lot of heart. There are moments in this movie that, even though it is a comic book movie, you do feel for the characters, you do feel for their plight, and you do have concerns when they're in peril, which is always the hallmark of a good movie. Now, if I had to give a rating to this movie overall, I would have to say I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. This is an effective film. This is a film that is highly entertaining to watch. It's not going to win any awards, but out of the DCU canon, this is one of the more entertaining and more enjoyable entries into the series. I do have to say that DCU has been on a roll lately. Joker was fantastic, although that's not technically considered a strictly DCU movie. And of course, I have to say that Aquaman and Birds of Prey have been fantastic. I hope you guys get to check out the movie because I greatly enjoyed it. And until then, I'll see you next time on Seduced on Cinema.